Mirabel Selwick did not know that the man in the corner was a king. She did not know his name, what people called him, or that 6 guards with weapons were hiding around the inn. They were dressed like regular travelers and sellers, so no one would notice them. She also did not know that the reason every feeling in her body was shouting at her to look at him, since she walked in, had nothing to do with how good-looking he was. And he was very, very good-looking. It had everything to do with a special connection that had been waiting her whole life to click into place. Here is what she did know. The meat stew was very tasty, the fire was warm and nice, and her 2 best friends had not stopped talking about that man for the last 20 minutes. "Don't look now," Petra whispered. She leaned across the table without being quiet at all. "He's doing it again." "Doing what?" Mirabel tore a piece of bread from the loaf between them and dipped it in her stew. "Looking at you." Mirabel did not look. She had been very careful not to look since they arrived at the Crossed Antlers Inn 1 hour ago. They were tired from the road and smelled like beeswax and animal fat from the 3 boxes of candles loaded in the wagon outside. They were halfway through a 2-day trip to sell goods at the eastern market towns. It was the same route Mirabel took every season. This inn was where they always stopped for the night. Warm beds, good food, a person who took care of the horses, who did not charge too much money. What was not usual was the man sitting alone at a table in the far corner near the stairs. She had seen him once when they walked in. Just once. That had been enough. His hair was tawny brown, cut to his jaw and tucked behind one ear. His face was all sharp angles and quiet strength. It was the kind of face that seemed made to make women forget how to talk. He wore a dark green long coat with the sleeves pushed up to his forearms. It was simple, but very well made. He sat with the easy stillness of someone who was used to being the most dangerous person in any room, and did not feel the need to prove it. One look. Then Mirabel looked at the floor, and walked to the farthest table, and told herself very firmly that men who looked like that did not end up at random inns on trade roads. And if they did, they certainly did not look twice at women who had wax under their nails and road dust in their hair. "He is definitely staring," said Joran, Petra's husband. He was smart enough to keep his voice lower than his wife's. "Mira, I am not joking. That man has been watching you since you sat down. He is probably watching all of us. We are loud." "We are not loud," Petra stopped for a moment. "Okay, I am loud, but he is not looking at me, he is looking at you." Mirabel ate her bread. The stew was truly excellent, rich and dark, with rosemary and root vegetables. She wanted to enjoy it without making up some silly fantasy about a stranger in a corner who was almost certainly waiting for someone more interesting to arrive. But something was happening that she could not explain. Something beneath the warmth of the fire, and the heaviness of the meal, and the familiar sound of Petra's chatter. A smell. Faint at first, mixed in with the smoke, and cooking meat, and old wood of the inn. But it was growing stronger every minute she sat here. Cedar, deep and clean and sharp, and under it something cooler. Rain, not the memory of rain, but the real living smell of it. The way the air smelled in the seconds before a storm broke, electric and full. She had never smelled anything like it. Not here, not anywhere. She breathed it in and felt something in her chest grow bigger, like a fist opening that she had not known was clenched. "Mirabel." Petra's voice had changed. It was not teasing anymore. It was careful. "He is getting up." Mirabel's hand tightened on her bread. "He is walking this way." "Petra, stop. I am telling you he is walking right toward this table, and I need you to put down the bread because you have stew on your chin." Mirabel wiped her chin with the back of her hand and looked up. He was right there, standing at the edge of their table with his hands at his sides, and those eyes. Oh, those eyes. Dark moss green, like the deep woods after rain. And the cedar smell hit her so hard that her vision went blurry. Not in a bad way. It was just so strong it felt overwhelming. Like standing in a group of very old trees and breathing in the whole forest at once. "Forgive me for interrupting," he said. His voice was low and calm. A voice that expected people to listen without needing to be loud. "I noticed your wagon outside. The boxes are stamped with a candlemaker's mark from Brindlewood." Mirabel stared at him, up close, the sharp planes of his face softened a little around his mouth. There was a faint scar along his jaw, thin and pale, half hidden by the way his hair fell. His sleeves were pushed back, and his forearms were lean and strong. "That is my mark," she heard herself say. "Selwick candles." Something changed in his face. A small flicker in those moss-green eyes that she could not read. "I have been looking for good candles for a castle in the northern mountains. The local sellers cannot handle the high place. The wax melts, and the wicks drown." "Beeswax mixed with a little bayberry for high places," Mirabel said without thinking. "Double-braided cotton wick cut long. The problem is not the wax, it is the wick. Most candle makers use a single braid, and it cannot pull the wax up well enough at high elevation." He looked at her for a moment too long. "You know your craft well." "I have been doing it since I was 9 years old." Petra kicked her under the table. Mirabel ignored it. "May I sit?" He pointed to the empty space on the bench next to Joran. Not next to her. Next to her friend's husband. Respectful, careful. Joran looked at Mirabel. Mirabel looked at the stranger. The cedar smell was so strong now that she could feel it like a real thing, warm against her skin, sinking into the spaces between her ribs. "All right," she said. He sat. He did not reach out his hand or tell her his name right away. That seemed strange to her. Instead, he asked her about candles that worked well in high places, and she answered. And somehow 20 minutes passed in which Mirabel Selwick forgot to feel shy about the wax stains on her sleeves and the road dust in her dark hair, because the man across the table was asking very smart questions about how to braid wicks, how fast candles burned, and the difference between animal fat and pressed beeswax. He told her his name was Lucien, just Lucien. He told her he was traveling north with a small group of people. He told her he took care of a large estate and was looking to place a standing order for good candles. Candles that would not flicker out in drafts or melt when stored. He did not tell her that the estate was a palace. He did not tell her that the small group included 6 hidden members of the royal guard. He did not tell her that he was Lucien Kestwick, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, traveling the trade roads to check border conditions without the chaos of a royal parade. What he did tell her, just before the conversation ended and Petra yawned so loudly that the forks on the table rattled, was this. "You smell like honey." He said it quietly, almost to himself, as if the words had slipped out without permission. Mirabel's heart hit once, hard against her chest. "It is the beeswax. It gets into everything, my hair, my clothes, my skin, probably." "No." His moss-green eyes held hers. Something in them burned, low and steady, like hot coals covered in ash. "Not beeswax. Honey, like sunshine caught in a jar." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "I am sorry, that was too forward." "It was," Mirabel agreed. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "But I will not hold it against you, since you smell like a cedar forest in the rain, and I have been trying to figure out why for the last hour." He went very still. Not the kind of still that comes from calm. The kind that comes from control. His pupils grew larger. She watched it happen. The moss green of his eyes darkened, turning into rings around something huge and focused. "You can smell it," he said. It was not a question. "Is that not normal?" "No." His voice had dropped lower, rougher. "That is not normal." Mirabel looked at Petra, who was watching this with her mouth slightly open. Joran had the look of a man who had just realized that the room had changed around him in a way he had not expected. "I should let you rest," Lucien said. He stood up from the bench in one smooth movement. "Will you be here in the morning?" "We leave at dawn." "Then I will find you at dawn." He held her eyes for one more moment. "Sleep well, Mirabel." He said her name like it was something he had been practicing, like it mattered. She did not sleep well. She lay in the small bed in the room above the main hall, and stared at the ceiling, and breathed in the cedar smell that still clung to her skin from sitting 3 feet away from him. She thought about the way he had looked at her when she said she could smell it too, like something inside him had cracked open, like something huge and scary had just become real. The smell faded as the hours passed. Not completely. A whisper of it stayed, like the last bit of wood smoke after a fire goes cold, and when it was gone, Mirabel felt the lack, a hollow place under her ribs that had not been there before, as if something important had been removed and the space it left was hurting. She came downstairs at dawn to find him already in the courtyard. He was leaning against the stone wall near the stable doors, with his arms crossed. The moment she stepped outside, the cedar hit her like a wave, stronger than the night before. The hollow place vanished, filled with warmth and the smell of rain on green wood. His eyes found hers. She saw relief in them before he could hide it. "You feel it too," she said, "when I am not close." "The emptiness," he said. He pushed off the wall and walked toward her. He stopped at a distance that was polite, but close enough that the smell wrapped around them both, like a living thing. "Since last night, I could not sleep." Neither could I. They stood in the gray morning light. The courtyard was quiet. The horses shifted in the stable behind the wall. They looked at each other with the honest confusion of two people who had been struck by something that neither of them understood. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear all of it before you answer." The door of the inn swung open behind them. A woman walked out. She was tall and dressed very nicely in a traveling gown of deep red, with gold thread at the cuffs and collar. Her hair was pale gold, pulled up in a fancy arrangement that had no business being on anyone's head at dawn on a trade road. Her eyes were sharp and golden brown. They looked from Lucien to Mirabel, and back again, with the careful judgment of someone adding up a list and finding it too short. "Your Majesty," the woman dipped into a curtsy that was both graceful and pointed. "I have been looking for you since dinner last night. Your guard said you were busy." The courtyard went very quiet. Mirabel looked at Lucien. "Your Majesty?" His jaw tightened. Something flickered across his face. It might have been frustration, or giving up, or both. "Lady Pelham, I did not know you were staying at this inn." "Lucky timing," she said. Taryn Pelham smiled. It was the kind of smile that had sharp edges. "I was on my way to Kestwick Hall for the season. My father arranged for me to be presented at court." Her tawny eyes slid to Mirabel. They looked at the wax-stained sleeves, the dusty boots, the dark hair still tangled from a bad night's sleep. "I see you have been passing the time." Mirabel felt the words land like a rock dropped into still water. She looked at Lucien. The cedar smell was still there, still warm, still wrapping around her like it knew her. But the word Majesty was ringing in her head like a bell. "You are the king," she said flatly. Lucien's moss-green eyes held hers. "That is what I was about to tell you." "Before or after you asked about how I braid my wicks?" "Barely after. Definitely after." Taryn Pelham stepped between them with the easy practice of a woman who had been inserting herself into conversations her whole life. "Your Majesty, the road north is long, and I would like to travel with your group. Perhaps we could talk about the plans my father wrote about in his letter." "There are no plans, Lady Pelham." Lucien's voice did not change in how loud it was, but it changed in how it felt. It went flat and cool, a king's voice. All the warmth Mirabel had heard the night before was gone. "Your father's letter asked for a court presentation. I have not accepted it or said no. Those are separate things." Taryn's smile became harder. Of course. Her eyes swept to Mirabel one more time, dismissive and thorough. "Enjoy the rest of your trading trip." She walked back into the inn. The door closed behind her. Mirabel stood in the courtyard, with cedar and rain flooding her senses, and a hollow ringing in her chest that had nothing to do with the bond, and everything to do with the sudden understanding that she had spent last night lying awake, thinking about a man who ruled a territory. And she was a woman who made candles. "Mirabel? I should check my wagon." "Mirabel, look at me." She looked at him. The moss-green eyes were raw and open in a way that made her breath catch, because kings did not look like that. Kings did not stand in dirty courtyards at dawn, with their hair uncombed and their sleeves still pushed back, and look at a candlemaker like she was the only real thing in the whole world. "I did not tell you because I wanted one conversation where someone talked to me like a regular person," he said. "You talked about wicks and burn rates. It was the best conversation I have had in months. I was not ready to lose that. You are a king. I am aware. I have wax under my fingernails." He reached out and took her hand. He turned it over and looked at her fingers with their short nails and their yellowish beeswax stains, and the small burn scar on her thumb from a spilled pot 3 years ago. The cedar smell grew stronger where his skin touched hers. Mirabel felt warmth rush through her like summer through a window thrown open. "These hands," he said quietly, "are the hands of someone who builds something real. Every day. with skill and patience and knowledge that took years to earn. He did not let go. Do not you dare say sorry for that. Her throat felt tight. She did not pull away. The morning went on from there in a way Mirabel could not have guessed. Lucien asked if she would ride with his group north, at least as far as the eastern crossroads where their paths split. She said no. He asked again. She said no again. He asked if she would at least let him ride next to her wagon, since they were going the same way anyway, and it would be a waste to travel separately. Petra, who had been listening from the stable doorway, said yes before Mirabel could say no a third time. They rode together through the morning. The forest was close to the road, spotted with green and gold. The leaves above filtered the light into moving patterns on the packed dirt. Lucien rode a dark brown male horse that moved like water. He rode beside the wagon and talked to Mirabel through the open side, while Petra drove and Joran slept against the candle boxes. He asked about her childhood. She told him about growing up in her grandmother's candle shop in Brindlewood, learning to dip candles before she could read, the way the whole house smelled of honey and hot wax. He asked about her parents. She told him her mother left when she was 4 years old. Her father was a good man, who worked in the timber yards and came home every evening smelling of pine sap and sweat. He had raised her with patience and steadiness, and had never once made her feel like she was not good enough. "Is that why you do not believe it?" Lucien asked. "That you are here? That this is real?" Mirabel looked at him. The forest light caught the tawny brown of his hair and made it warm, almost golden. His eyes were soft in a way that made her chest hurt. "I believe you are here," she said. "I believe something is happening between us that I do not understand. I believe you smell like the best thing I have ever breathed in, and it scares me." "Why does it scare you?" "Because you are a king, and I am a candlemaker, and in the stories, those do not end well for the candlemaker." He was quiet for a long time. The horse's hooves made a steady rhythm on the road. "This is not a story," he said, "and you are not a background character in mine." They stopped at midday where a small stream crossed the road. While Petra and Joran gave water to the horses, Mirabel sat on a fallen log near the water. Lucien sat next to her, close enough that the smell was a living warmth between them. Cedar and honey mixed together. She could feel the bond humming in her chest like a second heartbeat. "I have read about this," he said. "The scent bond. It is the rarest kind. It means the knowing goes deeper than sight or touch, down to something chemical, something very basic. The body knows before the mind catches up. My body knew the minute I walked into that inn. Mine knew before that. The water ran clear over smooth stones. I smelled honey on the road, 1/2 mile before the inn. I thought I was making it up. Then your wagon came around the bend and the smell hit me so hard, I almost fell off my horse." Mirabel laughed, a real laugh, sudden and surprised. Lucien looked at her with an expression that cracked something inside her chest. Wonder, simple, open wonder, as if the sound of her laughing was something he wanted to hear for the rest of his life. She kissed him. Not planned, not graceful. She turned toward him on the log and put her hands on either side of his face and kissed him. The cedar and honey surged between them like a wave breaking. His hands came up to her waist and pulled her closer with a gentleness that did not match the hunger she could feel shaking through him. For one perfect hanging moment, the whole forest went silent around them. When she pulled back, his eyes were closed. His hands were still on her waist. The moss green, when he opened his eyes, was nearly black with intensity. "I was supposed to tell you about the bond first," he murmured. "I had a whole explanation ready. You can explain later." "Mirabel," he said her name like a promise. "I need you to understand that this is not a small thing for me. This is not a quick interest in a woman I met at an inn. The scent bond means something specific in our world. It means you are mine, and I am yours, and that has been true since before either of us was born. That is a lot to put on a woman before lunch." He laughed, low and warm and real. It was the first time she had heard him laugh. It did things to her stomach that had nothing to do with the meat stew. Mirabel's path curved south toward the market towns. Lucien's continued north to the mountains, and a palace she had never seen, and a life so far from hers that the distance felt like a real injury. They stood at the fork in the road. Petra and Joran had placed themselves a polite 50 steps down the south road. Lucien's guards waited the same distance to the north, pretending to check their horses' gear. "Come with me," Lucien said. "Not as a duty, not as an order. As a question from a man who found you at a crossroads, and doesn't know how to walk away. I have candle deliveries. Petra can handle them. My shop, it will still be there. My life, Lucien, my whole life is in Brindlewood." He took her hand again. The smell bloomed. Cedar and honey twisted together like they were the same thing. Like they had always been the same thing. Mirabel felt the bond hum between them so strongly that her vision blurred. "Then I will come to Brindlewood," he said. "I will sleep above a candle shop, and eat bread from the bakery on the corner, and learn to trim wicks. I do not care where we are, Mirabel. I care that we are in the same place." She stared at him. "You are a king." "I know that I am a king. I have been a king for 6 years, and in all that time, no one has argued with me about bayberry amounts, or told me my candle suppliers were bad to my face, or made me laugh so hard I forgot to be careful." His thumb made a circle on the back of her hand. "Come north with me, just for 2 weeks. See the castle. Let me show you the hall that needs better candles. And if you hate it, I will drive your wagon back to Brindlewood myself, and never mention it again." "You are lying. You would mention it all the time." "I would mention it all the time," he agreed, "but I would do it from Brindlewood." They arrived at Kestwick Hall 3 days later. Mirabel had thought the palace would make her feel small. It did the opposite. The castle was old, built into the mountainside. All dark stone, and tall windows and fireplaces wide enough to stand inside. But it was also cold. Not just in temperature, in light. The candles were terrible. Cheap animal fat candles that sputtered in the drafts and gave off a sickly yellow glow that made every room look sad and grim. "You were not joking about the lighting," Mirabel said. She held up one of the candles and watched it drip sadly. "I never joke about lighting." "You told me you had a small estate." "I said large. I specifically said large." "You made it sound like a country house. This is a mountain fortress with 17 fireplaces." She looked at him. He looked at her. The cedar smell was everywhere in this hall, soaked into the stone walls and the heavy curtains and the worn rugs. And she realized with a jolt that it was not just him, it was his home. The whole place smelled like him. Standing inside it felt like standing inside the bond itself. The 2 weeks were barely 3 days old when Lady Taryn Pelham arrived at the palace with a traveling trunk, 2 helters, and a smile that could cut glass. Mirabel first saw her in the great hall during the evening meal. Taryn swept in wearing a gown of midnight blue with gold thread at the top. She took a seat at the high table as if a place had been set for her. It had not. Then she started talking to every noble in the room. When she saw Mirabel sitting next to Lucien, she smiled. "The candlemaker, how charming. I did not know the king's supplier sat at the high table." The hall went quiet. Mirabel felt the words like a slap, precise and public, meant to land exactly where they would hurt. But before she could answer, Lucien set down his cup. The sound was small. The silence that followed was not. "Lady Pelham," his voice carried the way a king's voice carries. Without effort, it filled every corner of the hall. "Mirabel Selwick sits at this table because I asked her to. She sits at my right because that is where she belongs. And if you speak to her with anything less than the respect you would show me, you will find that your visit to Kestwick Hall ends much sooner than you expected." Taryn's smile did not drop, but something behind it cracked. "Your Majesty, I meant no insult. I was only surprised." "Then let me remove the surprise." Lucien did not stand. He did not raise his voice. His moss-green eyes held Taryn's with a stillness that was more threatening than any shout. "This woman is my mate, recognized by a scent bond so strong that I could smell it half a mile down a trade road before I ever saw her face. She is not a curiosity. She is not a passing amusement. She is the reason this hall will be lit properly for the first time in 100 years. And she is the reason I plan to be a better king than I was before I met her." He paused. Let the silence work. "Is there anything else you are surprised about?" Taryn Pelham left Kestwick Hall the next morning. Her trunk was loaded before sunrise. Her curtsy to Lucien in the courtyard was stiff and correct and final. She did not look at Mirabel. Mirabel stood beside Lucien, and watched the carriage disappear down the mountain road. The scent between them pulsed. Cedar and honey. Warm and strong and impossible to deny. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did. You called me your mate in front of the whole court. I called you my mate because you are my mate." He turned to face her. He reached up and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear. The place where his fingertip touched her skin left a trail of warmth that sank into her bones. "Was I wrong?" She looked up at him. The mountain air was cold against her cheeks. The courtyard was empty, except for the two of them. The smell was everywhere, so strong she could taste it. Cedar on her tongue and honey on his. The bond between them hummed like a pulled string. "You were not wrong," she said. He kissed her forehead. Then her temple, gentle and careful and full of restraint. "Stay," he murmured against her skin. "I already was." 2 months later, the candle workshop at Kestwick Hall sat in a converted workroom on the ground floor of the east wing. It was placed where the morning light came through a row of tall windows and warmed the wax to the perfect working temperature. Mirabel had designed it herself. 3 long tables for dipping candles, a wall of shelves holding molds and spools of wick and jars of color, a stone fireplace for melting. The whole room smelled of beeswax and honey, and underneath it, cedar. She was testing a new blend that morning, a beeswax candle with juniper oil for the audience chambers. Lucien appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame and crossed his arms, and watched her the way he always watched her, as if she was doing something amazing, instead of dipping cotton string into hot wax. "The eastern hallway lights are burning for 12 hours without trimming," she said without looking up. "I told you the double-braided wick would fix it. You told me. I doubted you. I was wrong. This is becoming a pattern." She looked at him. He was smiling, the real smile, the one that softened the sharp planes of his face and made his moss-green eyes go warm and open. The one he only wore for her. "Petra sent a letter," Mirabel said. "The market trip went well. She sold out of the honey candles by midday. She could sell sand to a desert. She says the same about you." Mirabel set down her dipping rod. "She also says the whole town is talking about the king who rides down from the mountains every 3rd week to sleep above a candle shop." "I do not sleep above the candle shop anymore. I convinced the candlemaker to move in with me." "You bribed the candlemaker with a workshop and unlimited beeswax." "And it worked." She crossed the room to him. She stood in front of him in the doorway, with wax drying on her fingers and juniper oil on her apron, and her dark hair twisted up with a wooden pin. The smell rose between them the way it always did. Cedar and honey, strong and sure. A thing that had been true since before either of them was born, and would be true long after the candles burned down. He unfolded his arms, pulled her in, pressed his mouth against her hair, and breathed her in. She felt his chest expand with it, the fullness of it, the knowing that never faded, never got smaller, only grew deeper with every hour they shared. "Mirabel," he said against her hair. "Lucien, your friends were wrong, you know, that night at the inn." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "About what?" To look at him. His thumb traced her jaw. His moss-green eyes held hers with a steadiness that made her heart turn over. "He's out of your league," they said. They had it backwards. "You were always out of mine." She laughed. He kissed her. The candles burned on the table behind them, steady and bright, the best light Kestwick Hall had ever known. "Now that you have listened to the story, let us think about what we can learn from it. Your work has value, no matter what it is." She did it well, because she had practiced for many years, since she was 9 years old. She knew about wicks and wax, and how to make candles burn longer. Because of her skill, she could help fix a big problem in a whole palace. This teaches us that every job is important. Whether you grow food, teach children, fix cars, or make candles, your hard work matters. Never feel ashamed of what you do to earn a living. A king needed a candle maker. A doctor needs a cleaner. A pilot needs someone to cook their food. We all need each other. Be honest about who you are. Lucien did not tell Mirabel he was a king at first. He wanted her to like him as a regular person. But hiding the truth made things harder later. When she found out the truth from someone else, she felt confused and hurt. The story shows us that it is always better to be honest from the beginning. Good relationships are built on trust. If you hide something important, the other person might feel like they cannot trust you anymore. Stand up for people who are treated badly. When Lady Taryn Pelham said mean things to Mirabel, Lucien did not stay quiet. He spoke up in front of everyone. He said that Mirabel belonged at his table and that she deserved respect. This is a good example for all of us. If you see someone being bullied or treated unfairly, do not just watch. Say something kind to the person who is hurt. Tell the bully to stop. Use your voice to protect others. Love is not about money or titles. Lucien was a king with a palace and guards. Mirabel was a candlemaker with wax under her nails. In many stories, people say you should only marry someone who is as rich or as famous as you. But this story says something different. Lucien loved Mirabel because she was smart, honest, and hardworking. He was willing to leave his palace and sleep above a candle shop just to be with her. Real love is about how someone treats you, not how much money they have or what title they carry. You can become better because of the people you love. At the end of the story, Lucien said that Mirabel was the reason he wanted to be a better king. Love should make you want to grow, to learn, and to be kinder. When we care about someone, we should try to be the best version of ourselves for them. So remember, do your work with pride, be honest, stand up for others, love people for who they are inside, and always try to become better than you were yesterday. Thank you so much for watching this story. Please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and kindly subscribe to the channel. The channel posts new videos like this every day. Thank you, and see you on the next video.